Jim, what's the, you had a big year, but you've been doing this for a while. What's the best part of your job? What's your favorite part about what you're doing now?
It's getting to see other sides of people. I deal with a lot of politicians here in Washington and a lot in Japan, and it's getting to see other sides of them that you don't expect to see. What we try to do is we try to promote one thing Paige mentioned is yesterday, parliamentary exchange, bring congressional members to Japan, bring diet members to the U.S. Monica's heard this story before, but I was shocked, 2004, in January, we were bringing over a delegation of 7 diet members from different parties to Washington here. We were going to do a round of meetings. The Gulf War had, the Iraq invasion had already taken place, so the tensions among these guys were a little bit high here. And so we would normally try to stop by State Department, Department of Defense, and so on, but this time we said, you know what, we're not going to try to do that. You know, they may say things that, you know, in the heat of the moment right now. So 2 weeks out, I get a call from the embassy here, from the Congressional Affairs Minister, and he says, Mr. Gannon, he says, Donald Rumsfeld is trying to find you. And I mean, you don't want to hear those words. And I mean, first of all, my God, what's going to happen to me? Second of all, my God, why can't the Department of Defense find me in the phone book? So he is, and our organization, I mean, it's nonpartisan, but it's filled of people who are relatively progressive. On the Japanese side, it's on the U.S. side. So policy-wise, this is not somebody that I would agree with. However, I get in contact with his office, and they say, Jim, you know, can the diet group come in and meet with him and, you know, sit down if they can spare an hour? I said, an hour? My God. He said, well, he's not going to sit with them the whole hour. He'll brief them for 20 minutes, and then he wants to hand it off to General Abizade is here and the other generals, and they can brief him. But what he really wants to do, and if this is okay with you, I don't know how you feel, but he heard that your boss, Tadashi, his wife had come down with breast cancer, and he wants to take him aside and just see if his old friend is okay. And he scheduled this whole meeting. He'd been in our parliamentary exchange in 1968. He had strong ties with Japan and strong ties with my boss. But he scheduled this whole meeting on the afternoon of the State of the Union, we're going to rush out quite soon to that, to sit down, you know, for 30 minutes with his old friend and just make sure everything was okay. So people are strange. You know?
Okay, Laurel, for you, so you were the, I know I can mention this, you were the executive director, and before that you were the president of the JETAA Pacific Northwest?
Yeah.
JETAA DC?
No, I wasn't president of DC.
Oh, okay.
No.
So, but then now working as an artist, how does Japan stand in your life? How does it influence your work?
I think
what places is it? Because you can take the jet out of Japan, but
right. No, I mean, I think there are a couple of things. Purely on, I mean, for me, Japan just had a profound influence on me just aesthetically. And I think, you know, just visually and sort of the way that you feel when you're experiencing Japan and everything, and we've all had that. And then I've also, I mean, I've stayed really involved with JET here, I'm on the committee that reads applications, although I haven't done it this year, but last year. But read the applications before that you get them to interview people, and then also interviewing. I've been doing that for like since '98, and so that keeps me involved. And then the National Cherry Blossom Festival, which the reason I'm still on the board there, because I was brought on the board because I was the executive director, which totally makes sense. Once I became an artist, I was like, why am I still here? But I'm one of the few people that can sort of speak Japanese and sort of have an idea of what's going on. And with the 100th anniversary coming up, they actually changed the bylaws so that I couldn't get off the board until So I sort of got stuck. But on the art side, you know, it's interesting. You had mentioned the Sakura installation that I did. I didn't realize that Japan was going to play such an influence in my art. I really didn't have, I mean, I was just making it and not really thinking a lot about it. But as an artist, once you start showing your work, you actually have to tell people why you're making what you're making. And you also have to give things titles. And I have a personal, like, I hate when things say untitled, because I think it just, you're not getting any information about what a piece says or whatever. And so I'd like to know what the artist is thinking besides untitled. But I also found that with a lot of my work, it's sort of abstract. Japanese words kept popping in my head. And so I've just been naming things, not all the time, but certainly I utilize Japanese vocabulary to explain, I mean, because the words are prettier and everything like that. And so, and more descriptive. And my first solo show in Washington, DC ended up being called Kuroi Shiroi, because it was black and white, and I thought black and white was a really boring title. And in Japanese, it sounded so much better. Although I did have one woman at my opening come up to me, and she's like, well, where's the Japanese artist? I was like, what? I was like, that's just the title of the show. I was like,
what that's?
Yeah. But a lot of, I guess, yeah. I think a lot of my work is installation based. So what I'm doing is I'm taking pieces, I'm installing them in a gallery, and then I'm taking them down when the show is over. And so they never exist as they were at one point. You know, they're always changing, and this idea of mutability and transformability and death and loss and all the other good stuff that comes along with it. I was actually at the Japan Information and Culture Center, and I was listening to a lecture on the tea ceremony when I was making the Sakura installation, and they brought up the concept of Ichigo Ichie, which is, you know, big, and it makes so much sense, and especially when you're starting to think about, especially the sort of the poignancy of the cherry blossoms and everything. So that really became sort of an interesting stepping stone for a lot of the work that I've been doing recently too. So.
Okay, now on to Anthony. I think the first time I met you, you had come to Brooklyn. There was a big thing at Borough Hall because you had just been, I think you had been recently elected, and there was a lot of kind of media attention both in the U.S. and Japan, because you were the first ever North American to hold an elected office in Japan. I think there was a Finnish guy who parliament. That's why you got to North
Gotta be careful now when I do that, you can see my bald spot.
I always wanted to ask you, what was that like, being suddenly, you know, in the spotlight and celebrity, and suddenly people are paying a whole lot on both sides of the...
That was fun, you know. I mean, it was fun, it was interesting, but to be honest, I didn't take it too seriously, because the fact of the matter was, it was because I was kind of a novelty, you know. I hadn't really done anything yet, so, you know, I didn't want to, wow, geez, that must be important. Everybody's following me around with a camera, you know. But it was fun, I enjoyed that, and I tried to parlay that into, you know, to promote the city, and, you know, it gives you a certain image that you could use when you're trying to get legislation passed and like that. So that was, it was fun, but, you know, that in 20 cents, not even in one song old there, the token used to be 20 cents when I was a kid. That, the token will get you on the subway, right? You know, it's not that big a deal. So,
and who was the most famous person that you met in the midst of all that media circus?
The most famous.
Or the celebrity, or a memorable celebrity, perhaps? I remember, was there something about Giuliani?
Yeah, I met Giuliani when he came to Japan. It was after that.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. I met Giuliani, and, you know, what was kind of fun to me was Marty Markowitz, the borough president.
Right.
Because he's a character. And at one point we were just the two of us were together, and he said to me, you know, Anthony, half of this job is just making the people who live in your city like the place they live. If you get the people to believe that this is a good place, they'll try to make it better. So if you can create that kind of atmosphere, you can get a lot of things done. And that was great advice. And I had since met a few other politicians on exchange programs. I met the mayor of Burlington, who came over on an exchange program. Burlington in Canada, near Toronto. And he said the exact same thing. And most politicians that I've met that are pretty good at their job would usually say that. So, yeah, I try to incorporate that and understand it as much as possible.
Now, I heard, I haven't seen this yet, but I heard that you were actually on the Japan side of things. You were actually on the Beat Takeshi show, where there was a. And I heard that we might actually have a clip.
Oh my God! Oh no!
I hope this is the right clip.
It's not my work. I got my clip.
It's going to be embarrassing if it's not.
This was.
If not, we'll all go home and watch it on YouTube or something.
Is this the national broadcast?
Yeah, this was a national broadcast. They did about Katsuyaku State
You might have to
guys.
put the microphone up to the.
Katsuyaku State guys in different areas and whatnot. This was about a year and a half ago.
This is like when they used to put those horns on the record players, right? And it was
Right.
basically what we're doing.
So they were just finishing up with.
あ、わあ。